I never thought the woman I trusted most in this world, the woman carrying my child, could look me in the eyes every night and still hide something so dark. For weeks, I felt like something was off, like there was a shadow moving quietly in the background of my life. My wife smiled, cooked dinner, rubbed her pregnant belly as if nothing was wrong. But deep inside me, I felt an uneasiness I could not explain. And it all came crashing down the day I walked into the bank and discovered the truth that nearly destroyed me. Before I go further, I want you to know this story is not easy to tell. It is not just about money. It is about betrayal, trust, and a truth so painful that it left me questioning everything I ever knew about love and family. When it all started, I was the happiest man alive. Or at least, I thought I was. My name is Daniel. I am 32 years old, and I had been married to my wife Sarah for 3 years. She was 28, beautiful, kind, and for most of our marriage I believe she was the perfect partner. When she told me she was pregnant, it felt like the best news of my life. We had been trying for a while, and after months of hoping, her test came back positive. I still remember the way she cried in my arms that morning, whispering that we were finally going to be parents. I kissed her forehead and promised I would do everything in my power to make her and our child happy. From that day on, I worked harder than ever. I had a decent job in finance, pulling long hours, sometimes weekends too, because I wanted Sarah to be comfortable. I wanted to build us a safe home and save enough for the baby's future. Every paycheck I earned, I carefully budgeted. Our joint expenses, savings, and my personal account were all organized. Or at least, that is what I thought. At first, everything seemed normal. Sarah stayed at home, focusing on the pregnancy. She spent her days decorating the nursery, buying little baby clothes, and showing me all the cute things she had ordered online. I would come home tired but happy, because seeing her glow with excitement made all my hard work feel worth it. But slowly, I started noticing small things. It began with unusual expenses. A few $100s missing here, a few hundred there. At first, I thought it was just baby-related shopping, maybe furniture or hospital bills. I never questioned Sarah, because I trusted her completely. She would smile and assure me she had only bought what was necessary. And yet, every time I checked my account, I felt a sting of doubt. Then came the phone calls. Twice, I picked up the landline to hear bank representatives asking for me. They mentioned large transfers I did not remember authorizing. When I asked Sarah about it, she would change the subject, saying I was stressed from work and needed to relax. She was always sweet about it, kissing my cheek, rubbing her belly, reminding me I was about to be a father. I wanted to believe her, but that uneasy feeling only grew stronger. The breaking point came one Friday afternoon. I had left work early because of a system issue at the office. Instead of heading home, something inside me told me to stop by the bank. I cannot explain why, but I needed to see my account face to face, without emails or online portals. I walked up to the teller and requested a full statement of my personal account. What I saw made my blood run cold. The account that should have had well over $100,000 in savings was nearly empty. Transfer after transfer, withdrawal after withdrawal, each one adding up to almost exactly $100,000 gone. My hands shook as I scanned the pages, recognizing Sarah's name on several authorizations. She had been draining the account for months, quietly, behind my back, while I worked long hours to keep us afloat. I cannot describe the mix of emotions that hit me in that moment. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, fear. I wanted to storm home and confront her immediately, but part of me could not believe it was true. Maybe there was a mistake, maybe someone had hacked us. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had ignored the signs for too long. The banker must have seen my face go pale, because he leaned forward and asked if I was all right. I nodded, trying to hold myself together, and asked him for copies of every transaction. He handed me a folder and quietly said, "If you did not authorize these, you may need to file a fraud report." I swallowed hard, because the word fraud felt like poison in my throat. Fraud meant someone I trusted had betrayed me, and the only person with access to that account was my wife. Driving home that evening, I felt sick. The whole world outside my car window seemed blurry, like I was moving through a nightmare I could not wake up from. Sarah was at home, probably cooking dinner, humming to herself the way she always did. How could I walk in and look at her, knowing what I now knew? I gripped the folder tighter in my hand, every page filled with proof that the woman I loved had been stealing from me. When I entered the house, The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Sarah stood in the kitchen, wearing one of my old t-shirts, her belly round with our child. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like she was the perfect wife waiting for her hard-working husband to come home. For a second, I almost wanted to throw the folder away, to forget what I had seen, to keep living the lie. But the weight of betrayal was too heavy to ignore. I set my briefcase down, kissed her cheek mechanically, and sat at the table. She asked why I looked so tense, and I forced a smile, saying work had been stressful. Inside, I was boiling. Every laugh, every sweet word from her lips, felt like poison now. She had stolen $100,000 from me, from our future, from the very child she carried. And yet she looked me in the eyes as if nothing had happened. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her steady breathing. My heart pounded in my chest as questions raced through my mind. Why did she need the money? Where had it gone? Was she hiding something even worse than I imagined? I could not sleep, because the more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. The next morning, I woke up before her and quietly pulled the folder from my briefcase. I studied each transaction carefully. The money had been funneled into a separate account under her maiden name, then withdrawn in cash. No big purchases, no houses, no cars. Just money disappearing into thin air. It made no sense. Why would she take the money and hide it? Unless she was preparing for something she did not want me to know about. I stared at her as she slept, her hand resting gently on her stomach. She looked peaceful, innocent, but I no longer trusted my own eyes. I needed answers. And I knew that when I confronted her, everything about our marriage, our family, our future, would shatter. But I could not wait any longer. The betrayal was too big to hide. I leaned back in my chair that morning, folder in hand, and whispered to myself, "Tonight, I will ask her. Tonight, I will uncover the truth." That evening, I could not stop watching Sarah. Every little gesture, every smile, every word seemed rehearsed, as if she was wearing a mask I had never noticed before. My mind screamed at me to throw the folder on the table and demand answers, but my heart hesitated. She was carrying my child, and the thought of stress harming the baby made me pause again and again. Still, I knew the truth had to come out, and the longer I waited, the more dangerous this secret became. I decided to test her before confronting her directly. Over dinner, I casually asked if she had made any big purchases lately, maybe something for the nursery or the hospital. She smiled and shook her head, saying she was being careful not to overspend. Her voice was soft, sweet, reassuring, the way it always had been. If I had not seen the bank records with my own eyes, I might have believed her. But sitting there, listening to her lies so effortlessly, made me feel like a stranger in my own home. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie. I agreed, though my mind was elsewhere. I studied her expressions, the way she leaned against me, the way she laughed at the funny scenes. She looked like the perfect wife, but all I could think about was the $100,000 she had stolen. At one point, she looked up at me and asked why I was so quiet. I forced a smile and said I was just tired. She kissed my cheek, and I felt my stomach turn. How many kisses had she given me while hiding this secret? Later that night, when she went to shower, I slipped into the living room with the folder. I opened it again, tracing the dates of the withdrawals. The pattern was clear. Every 2 weeks, almost the exact day my paycheck hit, she made another transfer. It was deliberate, calculated, not some mistake or accidental overspending. The thought chilled me. She had been planning this for months, maybe longer, and she knew I would not notice until it was too late. When she came back into the room, wrapped in a towel, she caught me staring at the folder. My heart jumped, but I quickly slid it under some papers on the table. She did not seem to notice. She just smiled and asked if I was coming to bed. I nodded, but inside I was screaming. I could not keep pretending forever. The next morning, I finally decided it was time. I brewed coffee, set the folder on the table, and waited for her to come down. When she did, she looked half asleep, rubbing her belly and asking why I was up so early. I gestured for her to sit. My voice shook slightly as I said we needed to talk. She looked concerned, then curious, then a little nervous. I pushed the folder toward her and said, "I went to the bank yesterday." Her face froze for a split second before she forced a smile. "What do you mean?" she asked lightly. I opened the folder, showing her the withdrawals. My voice hardened. "You took the money, Sarah? $100,000. Where is it?" For a moment, she said nothing. She just stared at the papers, her lips parted, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Then she tried to laugh, dismissing it as a mistake. Maybe the bank mixed something up. But when I pointed out her signature on the authorizations, her expression changed. The mask slipped. Her smile faded, and her eyes grew cold. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms over her chest. "Fine," she said softly. "Yes, I took the money. But you would not understand why." Her calmness shook me more than her confession. I expected tears, apologies, explanations. Instead, she looked at me with a defiance I had never seen before. I demanded she explain herself, but she only said it was necessary. "Necessary for what?" I snapped. "Do you have any idea what you have done? That was our savings, our future, our baby's security." She looked away, her jaw tight. "You think you know everything, Daniel, but you don't." The cryptic words sent a chill down my spine. What did she mean by that? I pressed her harder, demanding to know where the money had gone. Finally, she whispered, "I was protecting us." Protecting us from what? She refused to answer. She just stood up, tears welling in her eyes now, and said she needed to lie down. She left me sitting at the table, the folder open in front of me, my head spinning with confusion and rage. The rest of the day was tense. She stayed in the bedroom most of the time, claiming she was too tired. I paced the living room, replaying her words over and over in my head. Protecting us. What could that possibly mean? Was she paying off debts I didn't know about? Was she hiding something from her past? Or was it something far darker? That evening, I decided to dig deeper. While she slept, I searched the house. Drawers, closets, even the garage. I found receipts stuffed in a box under the bed. Receipts for cash withdrawals, wire transfers, even some money orders. But none of them explained where the money went. It was like she had taken it and erased it from existence. My mind went to dark places. Was she gambling? Was she being blackmailed? Or, the thought that cut the deepest, was she planning to leave me and start a new life somewhere else? The next day, I followed her. I pretended I had work, but instead I trailed her car when she left the house. She drove across town to a small office building I had never seen before. She parked, went inside, and stayed there for over an hour. When she finally came out, she carried a small envelope in her purse. My heart raced as I watched her, wondering what she was hiding. I wanted to confront her right there, but something held me back. I needed proof, real proof, before I made my move. So I followed her again the next day, and the next. Each time, she visited the same building, stayed for an hour, and left with an envelope. Finally, I could not take it anymore. I went to the building myself. The sign on the front said it was a legal services office. Inside, a receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I said no, but curiosity gnawed at me. I asked if Sarah had been there. The receptionist hesitated, then said she could not give out client information. But the look in her eyes told me enough. Sarah had been using that office for something important, something she did not want me to know. When I got home that night, Sarah acted normal, chatting about baby names and dinner plans. I stared at her, struggling to keep my voice calm. Inside, I felt like my world was collapsing. She was my wife, the mother of my child, and yet she was living a double life I could not comprehend. Lying in bed that night, I finally realized the truth. This was bigger than money. Sarah was hiding something that went beyond financial betrayal. And until I uncovered it, I would never be safe. The third night, I could not sleep. Sarah's breathing was calm beside me, steady like nothing was wrong, but my mind was racing. The envelopes, the money, the lies. It all piled together like a mountain crushing my chest. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself again and again, who was this woman I married? At dawn, I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen. I made coffee but barely drank it. My hands shook too much. I thought about calling the bank again to see if there were more withdrawals, but I already knew the truth. It was not about the money anymore. It was about what she was doing with it. Later that morning, Sarah said she had a doctor's appointment. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her purse, and left. The moment she was gone, I followed. I stayed far behind this time, careful not to be noticed. She did not go to the hospital or any clinic. She drove straight back to that small office building. I parked on the opposite street and watched. She walked inside, same as before. An hour later, she came out holding another envelope. This time, I could not stop myself. I followed her car closely as she drove away. She turned into a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town and pulled up to a small brick house. My heart pounded as she walked up the steps and knocked. The door opened, and a man I had never seen before stood there. She handed him the envelope, and he nodded, letting her inside. I sat frozen in my car, unable to move, unable to breathe. An hour later she came back out, no envelope in her hands, her face calm. She drove away like nothing had happened. I stayed, staring at that house, questions tearing me apart. Who was that man? What was in the envelope? Why was she meeting him behind my back? That night at dinner, I watched her closely. She asked about my day, smiled as she talked about the baby, even joked about how swollen her ankles were getting. I nodded, smiled faintly, but inside I was screaming. Finally, I asked her, "Where did you go today?" She froze for a second, then smiled too quickly. "The doctor," she said. "Just a checkup." I leaned back, my chest tight. She had lied again, so easily, so naturally. After she went to bed, I made a decision. The next time she went to that house, I would follow her inside. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The chance came 2 days later. Sarah left in the afternoon, purse in hand, telling me she was running errands. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. Just like before, she went to the office, got an envelope, and then drove to the brick house. This time I parked closer, my hat pulled low over my eyes. She knocked, the man let her in, and the door closed. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I waited a few minutes, then stepped out of my car and walked toward the house. The curtains were closed, but I could hear muffled voices inside. I crept along the side and found a narrow gap where the curtain did not quite meet. Through that sliver, I saw my wife sitting at a table across from the man. He opened the envelope and pulled out stacks of cash. My chest tightened. That was my money. Our money. He counted it slowly while Sarah sat with her hands folded on her belly. Then he slid a folder across the table to her. She opened it, flipped through the papers, and nodded. I could not hear the words, but I could see the exchange. Money for documents. My wife was involved in something dangerous, something far beyond what I had imagined. I stepped back, nearly stumbling over the grass, my breath ragged. I returned to my car before anyone saw me. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. That night, Sarah returned home late. She smelled faintly of perfume, not hers, but something unfamiliar, like she had been somewhere else. She smiled when she saw me, kissed my cheek, and asked if I had eaten. I nodded numbly. She moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong, humming softly to herself. I stared at her and thought about the man, the cash, the folder. The woman I married was gone. In her place stood someone I did not recognize. Days passed, and I kept my secret. I watched her more carefully now, listened to every word she said, studied every move she made. She continued her trips, always with envelopes, always with that man. My anger grew each day until it felt like a fire eating through my chest. Finally, I could not stand it anymore. I went back to the house when she was not there. I knocked on the door, and the man answered. His eyes narrowed the second he saw me. "Who are you?" he asked. I told him I was Sarah's husband. His jaw tightened. He tried to close the door, but I blocked it with my hand. "Tell me what she is doing here," I demanded. His face remained cold. "You should talk to your wife," he said. Then he slammed the door in my face. I stood there shaking, rage boiling in my veins. I wanted to kick the door down, but I forced myself back to the car. My head spun with questions, and the fear that maybe, just maybe, I was in over my head. That night, Sarah was different. She was distant, distracted, checking her phone often, biting her lip nervously. I asked what was wrong, and she said nothing, just tired. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew. The man must have told her I had come by. Later, as we lay in bed, she whispered suddenly, "Daniel, do you trust me?" The question cut through the darkness like a knife. I swallowed hard and whispered back, "I want to." She said nothing after that, just turned away and pretended to sleep. But I knew. She was keeping secrets that could destroy everything, and my silence would not protect me forever. The next morning, I found a new envelope in her purse while she showered. This one was thicker, heavier. I opened it carefully. Inside were more documents, but these were not just receipts. They were legal forms, identification papers, even a passport with a different name. My heart stopped. Sarah had another identity. I sat there holding the passport in my hands, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The name on the document was not Sarah Miller, not my wife. It was someone else, a completely different identity. Her picture was there, but the name and birth date were false. My mouth went dry as I flipped through the pages. The passport looked official, stamped, real. She had built another life, one I knew nothing about. I slipped it back into the envelope and returned it to her purse just as she turned the shower off. I rushed back to the kitchen, trying to look normal. My hands trembled as I poured coffee I did not even want. When she walked in, she smiled faintly, drying her hair with a towel. "You are up early," she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the morning passed in silence. She hummed while she prepared breakfast, acting like everything was fine, but every move she made now seemed calculated. I wondered, had she noticed I touched her purse? Was she waiting for me to say something? My chest tightened with fear. That night, after she fell asleep, I lay awake staring into the darkness. I kept thinking about the other man, the cash, the documents. What if she was planning to leave me? What if she was planning to take the baby and vanish under that false name? My mind spun with 1,000 questions and not a single answer. The next day, I could not take it anymore. I went back to the bank, demanding to see the manager. He recognized me right away, his eyes cautious. I told him there had been multiple unauthorized withdrawals from my account, and I needed details. He hesitated, then finally pulled out a folder. When he slid it across the desk, my stomach dropped. Each withdrawal had Sarah's signature. Each one authorized. The manager looked at me with pity, saying softly, "She has full access, sir. There is nothing we can do." I walked out of the bank in a daze, clutching the papers. The woman I trusted, the woman carrying my child, had drained my account willingly, signing away money that I had worked for years to save. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the car, fighting the urge to scream. When I returned home, Sarah was sitting on the couch with her laptop. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes flickered with something unreadable. I wanted to throw the folder in her face and demand the truth, but instead I forced a smile. I sat down, pretending everything was fine. Inside, though, I was burning. 2 nights later, I followed her again. This time she did not go to the office or the brick house. She drove out of town, to a shabby motel on the highway. I parked far away and watched her slip inside room number 6. I waited, my heart pounding with each passing minute. After almost an hour, she came out. She was not alone. The man from the brick house followed her, his hand brushing against hers casually. He looked at her with a familiarity that made my stomach twist. She glanced around nervously, then got back into her car and drove away. He stayed behind. My mind screamed with betrayal. Was she sleeping with him? Or was it worse? Maybe they were both part of some scheme, using me and my money for something bigger. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. That night, Sarah slipped into bed quietly, pretending to be tired. But I could smell the faint scent of cologne on her clothes. Not mine, someone else's. I turned my back to her, my chest hollow, my rage simmering. Over the next week, I dug deeper. I stayed late at the office so I could search her things without her knowing. I found more papers hidden in a shoebox in the closet, papers with the same false name, documents linking her to accounts I had never heard of. She had been planning this for months, maybe years. The more I discovered, the more terrified I became. My wife was building an escape, a secret world, and she was using me to fund it. The money she had stolen was only the beginning. One evening, while she was in the shower, I opened her phone. She had a password, but I had watched her enter it enough times to know. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages. Most were normal, texts to her mother, a few friends, but then I found a string of messages to a contact saved only as M. "Meet me tomorrow," one message read. "I have the rest of the money." Another chilled me to the bone. "Once the papers are finalized, no one will find us." Us. The words seared into my mind. She was not planning this alone. She was planning it with him. The next day, when she said she was going grocery shopping, I followed her again. She drove back to the motel, back to room 6. This time, I could not stay outside. My rage exploded. I stormed up to the door and pounded on it with my fist. There was silence, then hurried shuffling inside. Finally, the door cracked open, and the man stared at me, his eyes widening in shock. Behind him, Sarah appeared, her face pale, lips parted in horror. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" she whispered. My hands shook with fury. I held up her phone, showing her the messages. "Who is he? What are you planning?" For a long moment, no one spoke. The man glared at me, Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and the air grew heavy with secrets too dangerous to name. And then, finally, She shattered everything. Daniel, I can explain, but you have to believe me. This is bigger than both of us. The silence in that motel room was suffocating. Sarah stood there trembling, her hands resting protectively on her stomach. The man glared at me, his jaw tight, as though he was deciding whether to push me out or let her speak. I felt my whole body shaking, not with fear, but with rage. I wanted the truth, and I was not leaving without it. Sarah finally broke the silence. Daniel, please sit down, she whispered, her voice shaking. I shook my head. No, you are going to tell me now. Tell me what this is. Tell me who he is. The man stepped forward, his voice low but firm. My name is Mark, he said. I stared at him, the name unfamiliar, but the way Sarah looked at him made my stomach twist. I turned back to her. What is going on, Sarah? Her lips trembled as she whispered, I never wanted you to find out like this. I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. Find out what? That my pregnant wife has been stealing my money, lying about doctors, sneaking off to motels with another man. Her eyes filled with tears. It is not what you think. My fists clenched. Then tell me what it is. She looked at Mark, then back at me, as though weighing the cost of the truth. Finally, she took a deep breath and whispered words that shattered me. Mark is not just anyone. He is from my past. Before I met you, I was involved in something dangerous. I thought I had walked away, but when I got pregnant, they found me again. I stared at her, my mind spinning. What do you mean, they? She wiped her eyes and whispered, the people I worked for. Criminals, Daniel. They launder money, steal identities, run frauds. Years ago I helped them once, just once, and I thought it was over. But they tracked me down. They said if I did not pay them, if I did not help again, they would hurt us. Hurt you. Hurt the baby. I staggered back, my chest hollow. All the envelopes, all the money, the fake documents, the second identity. She was not building a life without me. She was trying to escape them. Mark spoke up then, his voice flat. She came to me for help. I used to be one of them too, but I got out. They never forgive people who walk away. If they know Sarah is pregnant, they will use that against her. I stared at him, disbelief twisting my gut. So the money, the papers, the lies, they were all for this. For running. Sarah nodded, her tears spilling. I could not tell you, Daniel. If you knew, you would be in danger too. I had to make you hate me, so you would not be dragged into this. My throat tightened, my rage fading into something colder. Fear. I had been furious at her for weeks, convinced she was betraying me, but now the betrayal was something far worse. She had kept me in the dark while shadows circled our lives. I whispered hoarsely, why not tell me the truth from the start? She sobbed, because you trust people. You would have gone to the police. You would have believed they could protect us. But you do not know these people, Daniel. They have eyes everywhere. If they knew you were involved, you would be dead already. My knees felt weak. I sank onto the edge of the motel bed, my head in my hands. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was entangled with criminals so dangerous she believed silence was the only way to survive. Mark stepped forward, lowering his voice. They want more than money now. They want her identity, her access to your accounts, everything. That is why she has been pulling the cash. It is the only way to keep them satisfied for now. Sarah knelt in front of me, gripping my hands with hers. Her eyes were wide, desperate. Daniel, I love you. I love our baby. I swear, everything I have done was to protect us. Please believe me. For the first time in weeks, I looked at her and did not see a liar or a thief. I saw a terrified woman, fighting in the only way she knew how. But the question still burned in my chest. How far had she already gone? I pulled my hands away, my voice trembling. If what you are saying is true, then you are already in too deep. They will never let you go. Her face crumpled. That is why I made the second passport. That is why I have been meeting Mark. We are not just buying time. We are planning to disappear. Leave everything behind before they can find us. Disappear. The word echoed through my skull. She wanted us to vanish, to abandon our lives, our home, everything we had built. I thought about the baby, about the future I had imagined, and felt it slipping through my fingers like sand. Mark's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. You have two choices, Daniel. You can walk away now, pretend you never saw this, and she will go on alone. Or you can stand with her, help her, and know the risks. Either way, time is running out. I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but her hands were steady as they rested on her stomach. She whispered softly, I cannot do this without you. The room spun around me. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave, to save myself. But another voice inside me whispered louder. This was my wife. This was my child. And if what she said was true, walking away meant losing them forever. Finally, I whispered, if we do this, if we run, there is no turning back. Sarah nodded, her tears falling freely. I know. Mark, as though relieved. Then we need to move fast. Because they are already watching. At that moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and my blood froze. It was a text from an unknown number. We know what she is doing. The message on my phone burned into my mind like fire. We know what she is doing. My throat went dry as I showed it to Sarah. Her face went pale instantly. Mark leaned closer, his eyes sharp, and muttered, they are already one step ahead. Sarah clutched her stomach, her breathing fast. Daniel, they must be watching us, she whispered. My heart pounded as I scanned the motel parking lot through the window. A black SUV was parked across the street, its windows tinted so dark I could not see inside. My stomach dropped. Mark cursed under his breath. They are moving faster than I thought. He grabbed his jacket and paced the room. We cannot stay here. If they have your number, Daniel, they know you are involved now. I looked at Sarah, my chest heavy. This was it. There was no way back to normal life. I whispered, what do they want from us? Sarah's voice cracked. Everything. They want the rest of the money, and if we cannot give it to them, they will take the baby as leverage. Her words hit me like a blade to the chest. My fists clenched as rage boiled inside me. Nobody was going to touch my child. Not while I was alive. Mark stopped pacing and looked at me. We have one chance. We need to disappear before they close in. That means new identities, cash only, and leaving tonight. I stared at him in disbelief. Tonight. Our whole life gone in one night. Our house, our jobs, everything I had worked for. My mind reeled. But before I could answer, another message buzzed on my phone. This time it said, if you care about her, bring the money to the address tonight. No police. Or you both die. The room went silent. I felt my blood turn to ice. Sarah's hands shook as she whispered, they are testing you. If you go, you will not come back. If you do not go, they will come here. Mark's face hardened. We cannot give them what they want. It will never be enough. Once you pay once, they will keep demanding more. The only way to survive is to cut and run before they get their hands on you. But I could not stop thinking about the money. About how Sarah had already taken so much from my account. About the fake passport, the envelopes, the lies. My trust in her was cracked like broken glass. And yet, the danger outside was real. That night, as we sat in the motel room with the curtains drawn, Sarah finally confessed everything. She had once worked for them as a courier when she was younger, desperate for money. She thought she was out forever until they found her again. The pregnancy made her weak, easy to manipulate. They threatened her, so she stole from me, telling herself it was the only way to keep me alive. I listened, my chest tight, torn between fury and fear. She whispered through tears, I thought I could handle it alone. I thought if I gave them enough, they would let us go. But now it is too late. At midnight, headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into the lot, slow and deliberate. My pulse spiked. Mark grabbed my arm. They are here. I peeked through the curtain. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their faces hard, their movements sharp and controlled. They walked straight to the motel door and knocked, 3 loud raps that shook the walls. Sarah clutched my hand, her nails digging into my skin. Mark motioned for silence. The knocking came again, louder this time. Finally, a voice called out. We know you are in there. Open the door. Sarah's breathing was shallow, her whole body trembling. I looked at Mark, and for the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. He whispered, if you open that door, you are dead. The men knocked again, harder, and the cheap wood rattled under the force. I could hear one of them muttering to the other. Tom was running out. Mark whispered quickly, back door. Now. He grabbed the envelope of papers, shoved it into my hands, and motioned for Sarah. We slipped into the narrow bathroom, then through the cracked window into the night. My heart raced as I helped Sarah through, her swollen belly slowing her down. The moment my feet hit the gravel outside, I heard the motel door crash open behind us. They were inside. We ran into the darkness, the cold night air burning my lungs. Sarah stumbled, and I held her up, urging her forward. Mark led the way, weaving between cars, crouching low. Behind us, footsteps thundered, voices shouting. Get them. Do not let them escape. We reached my car and dove inside. My hands fumbled with the keys, shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. The headlights of the SUV across the street flared on, blinding us. Mark shouted, "Drive." I slammed the accelerator, the tires screeching as we shot out of the lot. The SUV roared after us, its engine growling like a predator closing in. My chest tightened with panic as I swerved through the empty streets, the dark vehicle glued to our tail. Sarah cried out, clutching her stomach, her voice cracking, "Daniel, the baby." I tightened my grip on the wheel, my jaw clenched. Nobody was going to take them from me. Nobody. We raced through the city, red lights blurring past, horns blaring as I cut across intersections. The SUV stayed close, its headlights glowing in the rearview mirror like hungry eyes. Finally, Mark shouted, "Turn here." I swerved down a side street, then another, trying to lose them. But the SUV was still behind us, relentless. My heart hammered as I whispered, "We cannot outrun them." Mark's face was grim. "Then we make them crash." Before I could ask how, he leaned out the window, something metallic glinting in his hand. He fired a shot at the SUV's front tire. The sound echoed through the night, and the SUV swerved violently, slamming into a parked car. Sparks flew as metal crunched. I gripped the wheel tighter, driving faster until the headlights vanished behind us. Sarah sobbed, half in relief, half in terror. When we finally pulled into a deserted gas station, I killed the engine and sat there trembling, my hands still locked on the wheel. Sarah's face was pale, her tears glistening. Mark lowered the gun, his jaw set. "This is just the beginning," he muttered. "They will not stop." I looked at Sarah, my chest heavy. For weeks I thought she was betraying me. Now I realized she had been drowning in something much darker, something that had wrapped around us both. And now, there was no way out. Sarah gripped my hand, her voice trembling. "Daniel, whatever happens, promise me one thing. Promise me you will protect our baby." I stared into her terrified eyes, the weight of the promise settling heavy on my chest. Outside, the night was silent, but I knew it was only a matter of time before the darkness found us again. The gas station lights buzzed faintly above us, but inside the car, silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. My hands were still locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white, chest heaving from the chase. Sarah leaned back against the seat, her face pale, sweat on her forehead, one hand on her stomach. Mark sat rigid in the passenger seat, his gun resting on his lap, his jaw tight. "They know where we are," Mark said finally. "That SUV was not just a warning, it was a message. They wanted us to understand they can reach us anywhere, anytime." I swallowed hard. "Then what now? Do we keep running forever?" Sarah's eyes glistened with tears as she whispered, "I cannot run forever, Daniel. I am pregnant, I am tired, and my body cannot handle this." I turned toward her, my chest heavy with guilt and love all tangled together. I wanted to yell at her for keeping secrets, for dragging me into this mess. But at that moment, none of it mattered. She was the woman I loved, the mother of my child, and she was breaking in front of me. Mark broke the silence. "There is only one way this ends. You cannot hide from them. You cannot outdrive them. You cannot pay them off. You have to confront them." My stomach twisted. Confront them. The words tasted like poison. These were men who had chased us through the night, men who had broken down motel doors, men who had no hesitation about killing. Sarah shook her head violently. "No, Mark, if Daniel goes to them, they will kill him." Mark's voice dropped low. "If he does not go, they will come for you and the baby." The air felt thick, almost suffocating. I stared at the cracked asphalt of the gas station, lit by the flickering light above. My mind raced, but deep down, I already knew what had to be done. "Tell me where they are," I said. Mark's eyes locked on mine, searching for hesitation. Finally, he nodded. "There is a warehouse by the docks. That is where they handle their deals. If you go, you better be ready." Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Daniel, please. This is suicide." I cupped her face in my hands. "Sarah, I have to end this. If I do not, they will never stop. Not for us. Not for the baby." Her lips trembled as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Promise me you will come back." I leaned close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I promise." But in my heart, I was not sure I believed it. Mark and I left Sarah hidden in a small roadside motel under a different name. She was terrified, but I told her this was the only way. As I kissed her goodbye, I slipped my wedding ring into her hand, just in case. The drive to the docks was quiet except for the sound of the waves crashing in the distance. The city lights faded, leaving only the glow of warehouses and the reflection of neon signs on the black water. My stomach churned with dread, but I forced myself to focus. Mark parked the car in the shadows and handed me a small pistol. Just in case. Do not hesitate. If you hesitate, you die. My hand shook as I gripped the weapon. I had never held a gun before, but tonight, my life and my family depended on it. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking shape against the night sky. Light spilled from a cracked window, and faint voices echoed inside. Mark motioned for silence, and we crept closer. My pulse thundered in my ears with every step. When we reached the entrance, 2 guards stood watch. Mark raised his gun and whispered, "On 3. 1, 2. Before he could say 3, I heard footsteps behind us. The click of a gun cocking froze me in place. A cold voice said, "Drop it." I turned slowly, my stomach dropping. 2 more men had come up behind us, guns raised, eyes like stone. Mark cursed under his breath and lowered his weapon. The guards at the door smirked and stepped forward. Within seconds, we were dragged inside, our arms twisted behind us, the smell of oil and salt filling my nose. The warehouse was dimly lit, crates stacked high, shadows stretching long across the concrete floor. At the center stood a man in a dark suit, his back to us as he examined a ledger. When he turned, his smile was calm, chilling, like a predator toying with prey. "So, Daniel," he said softly, as if we were old friends, "you finally decided to stop running." I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What do you want from us?" He chuckled. "What do I want? Your wife owes me. And when someone owes me, I collect." I shook my head. "You already took 100,000. His smile widened. "That was just a down payment. The real debt is much higher." My blood ran cold. Sarah had told me about her past, but not the full truth. Not the whole number. Mark spoke sharply. "Enough games. Let the woman go. She is pregnant." The man's eyes glinted. "Pregnant or not, a debt is a debt. And if Daniel cannot pay, maybe the child can." Rage exploded inside me, hotter than anything I had ever felt. My vision blurred as I shouted, "You touch my family, and I swear I will end you." The men around him laughed, the sound echoing off the walls like knives scraping metal. The leader stepped closer, his voice calm, his eyes sharp. "Then prove it. Show me you are not just a weak husband blindsided by his lying wife." I raised the pistol in my shaking hand. For a moment, the warehouse fell silent, every eye locked on me. My heart pounded, sweat dripping down my forehead. Mark whispered, "Do it, Daniel. Do it now." I tightened my grip, but before I could pull the trigger, the leader snapped his fingers. The guards shoved me to the ground, my gun skittering across the concrete. Pain shot through my ribs as they pinned me down. The leader crouched beside me, his smile cold. "You are not ready," he whispered. "But you will be. Because next time, I will not just take your money. I will take your wife. I will take your child. And you will watch." His words sliced through me like fire. My chest heaved as he stood, motioning for his men. "Throw them out." We were dragged out of the warehouse and dumped onto the gravel outside. My body ached, my pride shattered, but my fury burned hotter than ever. Mark groaned beside me, wiping blood from his lip. "They let us live," he muttered, "which means they are not done yet." I stared at the dark water of the docks, my fists clenched, my soul on fire. They thought they could break me, scare me into silence, use my family as pawns. But they had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. As Mark pulled me to my feet, I whispered, "This ends with me. Not with Sarah. Not with the baby. Me." The night air was cold, the waves crashing hard against the shore. And deep inside, I knew this was not over. Not by a long shot. The drive back from the docks was heavy with silence. Mark's breathing was shallow, his face cut and bruised. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned pale. But my mind was louder than the night outside. Every word that man spoke, every threat he made, burned into me. He had promised to take Sarah and the baby, and I knew he meant it. When I reached the motel, Sarah was waiting by the window, her hands pressed to her stomach as if protecting the life inside her. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward, wrapping her arms around me. But instead of relief, I felt only the weight of fear pressing down on me. "What happened?" she whispered. "Did they let you go?" I pulled back slowly, meeting her eyes. "They know about the baby, Sarah. They said if we do not pay, they will take everything. Her face went pale, tears filling her eyes. Daniel, I never wanted this to touch you, or the baby. Mark cut her off sharply. Wanting and reality are two different things. You made a mistake, Sarah. But now Daniel has to carry the weight. The room went quiet, the tension wrapping around us like chains. Finally, Sarah whispered, then what do we do? I stared at her, then at Mark, and finally at the cracked ceiling of the small motel room. There was only one answer, and it scared me more than death itself. We fight back. Mark raised an eyebrow. Fight back against them. Daniel, they are killers. I met his gaze. Then we stop running and become killers too, if we must. The words shocked even me. I was no fighter, no gangster, no soldier. But when someone threatened my family, something primal awakened inside me. Over the next few days, Mark and I made a plan. We watched the warehouse, studied the guards, memorized their shifts. Every night, I sat with Sarah, holding her hand as she slept, my mind torn between fear and rage. Finally, the night came. Mark and I slipped into the docks under the cover of darkness. The air smelled of salt and gasoline, the sound of water slapping against the pylons. My chest burned with nerves, but my mind was locked on one image, Sarah's face, and the baby she carried. We moved quietly, ducking between crates until we reached the back entrance. My hand shook as I held the pistol Mark had given me, but I forced myself forward. Inside, the warehouse buzzed with activity. Men moved crates. Weapons glinted in the dim light. And at the center, the man in the dark suit sat at a table, counting money. Mark nodded once. This is it. Before fear could stop me, I stepped forward, my gun raised. The room froze. Every eye turned toward me. The leader looked up slowly, his smile spreading across his face. Well, Daniel returns. My voice shook, but grew stronger with every word. This ends tonight. The men laughed, just like before. But this time, I did not hesitate. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse, echoing off the walls. The leader's smile vanished as blood blossomed across his shoulder. Chaos erupted, men shouting, guns being drawn. Mark fired beside me, dropping two guards before they could react. I moved through the madness with one thought: protect Sarah, protect the baby. Bullets tore through crates, sparks lit up the dark corners. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. The leader staggered back, clutching his wound, fury in his eyes. You will regret this, Daniel, he hissed. I leveled my gun at him, my hand steady for the first time. No, you will. Another shot rang out, and this time, he fell to the ground, motionless. The warehouse fell into chaos. Some men fled, others fired wildly, but Mark and I kept moving, forcing our way out. The night air hit my lungs like fire as we stumbled back into the docks. My body shook, my ears rang. But inside me, a strange calm spread. It was over. We returned to Sarah at the motel before dawn. She gasped when she saw the blood on my shirt, but I pulled her into my arms and whispered, "It's done. They will not come after us again." Her sobs shook against my chest, relief and guilt mixing in every breath. I kissed her forehead, holding her close. We had survived the storm, but we would carry the scars forever. As the